Hi everyone, thanks for joining me once again. My name's Peter, you're watching Thailand Bound. Okay, it's a Saturday, that can only mean one thing, it's story time. I've got 4 great stories lined up for you today that viewers have shared with me to share with you. Before I get into these stories today, I just want to address a question that's come up from several people. So I'm guessing there's a lot more people who are wondering about it. And it's about these stories when I go to Thailand. As some of you might be aware, I'm off to Bangkok in early October. I'm going to be out there for quite a while, about 2 months, coming back just before Christmas. And people are asking me, well, what are you going to do with these stories? Are you going to keep telling them when you're in Thailand, or are you going to leave them until you get back? And what I've decided to do, because they do take a lot of time and I don't want to sit in a hotel bedroom producing these stories. They generally take about 2 days with the editing, reading, recording, editing the video and everything. So what I've decided to do, I'm making the one a week that I'm putting out on a Saturday like today, and I'm trying to do an extra one. That way I can upload them to Google Drive, and then when I'm out in Bangkok, all I've got to do is release one every Saturday. So all the work will have been done. It's a lot of work now, but it'll leave me free in Bangkok to go out and film Thailand. That's what I'm going for. Okay, so I hope that's answered the question to those people who were asking. As I say, 4 stories today. The last one is very, very short, so I just clipped it onto the end, as it were. And yeah, let's just go for it.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I never had the desire or interest to visit Thailand. It was never on my radar. In 2008, I was traveling in India for almost 2 months and ended up in Kathmandu, Nepal with several friends. We were basically killing time there until our flight left. I talked to the airline to see if there was a possibility to change our reservation to leave a week earlier. India can really wear you down, and I was worn out and ready to head back to the US. We were able to change the tickets to an earlier departure. The only problem, or not a problem as it turns out, was we had to catch a connecting flight in Bangkok. 2 people in our party had booked flights straight through, but I was on a standby flight. Once we got to Bangkok, someone suggested I just get a hotel room for one night and arrange another flight for the next day instead of waiting all day at the airport. At this point, I really just wanted to go home and had zero interest in staying in Thailand. However, I was tired and run down from India, and I decided, somewhat kicking and screaming, to just get a hotel in Bangkok for a night and relax. During the flight from Kathmandu to Bangkok, I met an English guy on the plane and we chatted a bit. He was a nice guy with what seemed a lot of knowledge about Thailand. He was beginning a 6 months vacation there and had been there a few times before. After collecting my luggage, which I had a lot of after collecting stuff in India, as luck would have it, I ran into him again in the taxi area at the airport and asked if he could recommend a good hotel for the evening. He said, jump in with me and we can ride together into Bangkok. So I jumped in with him and ended up on a street called Soi 4. The taxi took us to several hotels, but they were booked up. We finally ended up at the Nana Thai mansion at the end of Soi 4 before you enter the park. Later, for 10 years, my wife and I would always stay there. I always felt comfortable there, and after 10 years of my wife and I staying there, the staff knew us well. It was also quiet and a good location to head out for shopping and restaurants. Anyway, we found a room there. I was dressed in cold weather clothes from traveling in the Himalayas, and opening the door to go outside at the airport was a real shocker. A wall of heat hit me like a freight train. I ran up to my room, dropped off my luggage, peeled off my sweater and ran back down to the travel agent in the lobby to book my flight out the next day. I was horrified to find there were no flights out for a week. I was stuck in Bangkok on this street called Soi 4 for a whole damn week. How horrible it was. About 2 in the afternoon and I went back up to my room and passed out. I woke up around 7 p.m. somewhat disorientated. I got up to go out and get a bite to eat. What a strange new world I'd entered into. When we came in the afternoon, it seemed like just the same as any other street. But when I went out at night, it was a whole other universe. I'd never experienced anything like this before. I walked down Soi 4 looking for some place to eat. The more I walked down Soi 4, the more amazed I was. What were these pool halls with all these lovely ladies? It seemed women were everywhere. Not having a clue about Thailand, I was a kid in a candy shop. What a place. I then made it down to Nana Plaza and crossed Sukhumvit to end up at an Arab restaurant a block or so away. I was married at the time, 12 years, to an Italian lady, a beautiful, wonderful woman. However, we were in a somewhat of a sexless marriage for the past couple of years, living more like brother and sister, which seems to happen to me with women. After a few years, the honeymoon is over and I get bored with the same woman after a while. Needless to say, I was quite amazed and attracted to all these lovely women everywhere, and the temptation got the better of me that night. I stopped in one of those massage parlors about halfway back to my room and ended up taking a girl back to my room for an hour or so of fun. All the years in a routine marriage, the floodgates opened up and I spent the rest of my time in bliss. Quite a transition from going to a country I had zero interest in visiting to a wonderland of low-hanging fruit, heaven on earth. The last night before leaving the next day, I was walking back to the hotel and I came upon a strikingly beautiful woman working in a massage parlor. She was just standing at the front with several other women, but something about her captivated me. After spending a week on Soi 4, I wasn't shy and asked her if she could come to my room. She gave me the number to call her massage shop, so I called and asked for her to come to my room. The manager sent the wrong girl and I had to call back and ask for Yip. Yip finally came and she was extremely shy and somewhat scared to come to a Farang's hotel room. She had heard of bad things happening to girls in hotels on the news and was very apprehensive. She was also very inexperienced in giving a massage. She took a fast massage course about a week before I later found out I was her first customer. This was her first night on the job. Now I know what you are thinking, I just fell for the story all the girls tell their customers. You will just have to take my word for it. It's true, as I later got to know her. She spoke very little English and I tried to tell her I was leaving the next day. I took her downstairs and got her a taxi home. I still remember the look on her face as she drove off. What a special woman, and I'd never see her again. Part of my heart left with her in that taxi. She later told me she came back to my hotel to see me, but they told her I was gone. She cried for 4 days and told all her friends that I was her husband. It turns out before we met, she had gone to an astrologer and tarot card reader, and the tarot card reader had told her that she would meet her husband soon. So when we met, she was convinced I was the one the astrologer foretold would come. All this didn't matter because I was back in the US with my wife, with only fading memories of our one night together. I had cheated on my wife, but I put it behind me and tried to forget about it. The next year again, I travelled to India and this time arranged my return flight through Bangkok. I again had a 1-week holiday. I saw Yip at the same massage parlour and actually avoided her because I knew if I made contact with her, I couldn't resist and it would be the end of my marriage. And at that point, I was trying to make things work with my wife. Yeah, a few girls I knew I wouldn't get attached to, but I stayed away from Yip because that would be fatal. The next year, coming back from India, I arranged to stop in Bangkok. This was 2010, I believe. At this point, my Italian wife and I were going our separate ways, and I had the feeling our marriage was nearing the end. I was walking down Soi 4 when out of nowhere, Yip appeared standing outside her shop. She jumped over the flower bed to meet me. I said, "I don't know you." And her face lit up with joy. "You're Michael," she said. "I have prayed every day you would come back to me." I could no longer resist and I took her out. We spent a few days together and I hate saying it, but I fell in love with her. She took me to her apartment. She lived near Anut station and on her shrine was a necklace from Nepal I had given her the first time we met. She would ask every day when the owner of the necklace would come back to her. What were the chances our paths would meet again halfway around the world? I have a pretty good sense of people and can read them at first glance. I felt Yip was a genuine good honest girl. I told Yip to give me 1 year to sort things out with my wife. On the last day I brought Yip a computer so we could communicate. I went to an ATM to get the cash and I forgot to take my card out of the machine and it ate it once again. That was the second time I did that in Thailand. I had no money to pay my hotel or get a taxi to the airport. Yip, to my surprise, volunteered to pay my hotel bill, quite a lot of money for her, and got me to the airport not knowing if I was trustworthy or she'd never see me again. As soon as I got home, I sent her the money and that kind of sealed our relationship and we began to talk on the internet. Once home, I asked my wife if she was happy in our marriage and she said no, she wasn't. Within a week, my wife and I mutually agreed to go our separate ways after 13 years of marriage. I never mentioned I had met Yip. She left for Italy, and 2 months later I flew back to Bangkok to tell Yip the good news. I was free. There was a severe travel warning issued by the State Department for Thailand right at the peak of the red shirt protests in May. I had left 2 months before, right when the protests started, then returned within days of it ending. Yip picked me up at the airport. We went out to the movies, had dinner, all the while Bangkok was burning. Right after that, Bangkok was issued a curfew, so we grabbed a cab and headed down to Hua Hin for a few days. When we returned to Bangkok, the protests were over. We went to our mum's house in Ubon Ratchathani and were married in the local Buddhist tradition. I had to give a dowry to save her family's face, but once the villagers saw I gave her mum a lot of money, Yip collected it and gave it all back to me. It was just for show. Yip's mum has never once asked me for money, and in fact I've had to at times insist she send her mum money. During this time I hired a lawyer to work out a fiancé visa, which took about a year and a half. During that time I flew to Bangkok once every 2 months. I could never go through the whole visa thing again, it was terrible. While waiting for the visa, I sent Yip around $1,500 a month as she quit her job. Before that, she was a manager at S&P and then managed an import-export business in the Big C. That went kaput, as Yip would say. Yip was a hard worker and was now out of a job at 37 years old. A friend suggested she try massage and she said no way. She had walked by the entertainment areas on her way to work and thought it was crazy. However, her friend eventually convinced her to try it. At this point, she was broke and had to do something. She later told me she would cry every day. During our visa wait, I read many horror stories of Thai women scamming men and vice versa, and at times I questioned her. However, during the year and a half wait, she proved to be honest and sincere. She never drank alcohol and hated the nightlife party scene. I never once caught her lying to me. Even to this day, she wouldn't touch alcohol. She's the exact opposite of most bar girls. The visa finally came through and I flew over to pick her up. We flew back to America and Yip loves it here. In many ways, for me, America is a repressive place only because I grew up here. For Yip, Thailand represents repression and her very difficult life there. America is freedom to her and Thailand is freedom to me. Yip started her own business here in America, and as all Thais are, she is a natural at business and trade. She isn't happy unless she is making money in her shop. She is the most honest woman I've ever met, full of integrity and compassion for others less fortunate. After 12 years of marriage, I trust her with my life. 3 years ago, we built a house in Ubon Ratchathani. She didn't really want to build a house there and said she did it for me, as she wasn't that excited to move back to her village after living in Bangkok and the US. I haven't been to our finished house yet because right then the worldwide illness struck. We told her mum and sister and family to move in. My dream is to retire to Thailand, but Yip wants to stay in the US. When we do move back to Thailand, we'll probably rent a place in Hua Hin, as she won't survive the village life at this stage and I probably couldn't either, but at the end of the day we have a nice house there. We have had a few ups and downs over the 12 years. What married couple hasn't? Our problems revolved around jealousy issues. It seems Thai women are naturally suspicious and jealous. I thought it was crazy because she is a beautiful woman and if anything I should be jealous of her. She will always be jealous, and I suspect one reason she doesn't want to move back to Thailand anytime soon because she thinks I'll run off with another Thai woman. She is 14 years younger than me. I think that is a good age difference. At 50, she looks like she is 28. She keeps my attention just fine. She was never a bar girl and was never attracted to that scene and got into the massage business late in her life. I feel like I'm the real accidental tourist stumbling upon Thailand, kicking and screaming without any preconceived notions to go in there, meeting the most amazing woman I've ever met. I believe in karma and so does Yip. Many forces were at work to bring us together. She continues to amaze me every day. So I hope this story is interesting to some. It could have been a disaster had it gone the other way. I was, needless to say, completely naive about scams and Thai girls, but somehow it worked out. She has made many friends with Thai ladies here in town, and it pretty much makes up our social life. She is a devout Buddhist and has a big heart. All the Thai women here have very good husbands that support them. I don't know of any bad relationships. Yip reads the Thai news of one bad thing after another happening to Thai women. I just tell her, look around at your friends here. They all have good marriages, and to stop reading the news, it's always bad stories. So here's my success story, and that's it. Isn't that a nice story? So yeah, I mean, guys, I mean, you know, it's not when you listen to these stories every week, it's all doom and gloom, crash and burn, and there's not that many successful stories. But he got lucky, didn't he? He got very lucky, and Yip turned out to be a nice girl, and that's great. 12 years, we've had a few success stories lately. As always, guys, if you're sitting on a story, whether it's a success like this story or a crash and burn car crash story, please send it in to me. I'll make it completely anonymous, and I'll read it out on a Saturday like I am these stories. Right, let's jump into story number 2. I had written earlier to you about my experience with ladyboys, which was the 4th story on volume 148. I love your channel and wanted to send you another story, this time of my very first trip to Bangkok, which was sometime in the mid-1980s. During those days, there was no such thing as the BTS or the MRT, and I clearly recall the dark grey exhaust fumes coming out of almost every bus at the time. Traffic was crowded, but not as bad as now, but at least now most of the vehicles are on LPG. At least that's what I heard. I don't recall where I stayed, only that it was a hotel on Sukhumvit. The only adult entertainment places I'd heard about during those days was Pat Pong and Soy Cowboy, although I think Nana Plaza existed. I had a friend from the States who knew this expat who lived in Bangkok. Let's call him Hugh, though that's not his real name. Upon arrival at the old Don Mueang airport, Hugh met me there, drove me to the hotel and helped me check in and get settled. I had arrived late at night, so for the next day I pretty much took it easy as I didn't feel like going out as it was too hot. Early that second night though, Hugh took me to some bar in Patpong. There were all these different vendors in the middle of the street selling all kinds of stuff, including bootlegged audio cassette tapes and VHS movies. I don't remember exactly which bar he took me into, but I was amazed at all of the beautiful girls in the club, and these girls were not ladyboys. From my memories, I'm guessing it was a go-go bar. My friend said I should choose one I liked and she will go back with me to my hotel room and spend the night if I wanted. I kept thinking, how awesome is this? During those days, I had little interest in ladyboys, so I asked him how could I be sure the girl standing in front of me was not a ladyboy. At that point, Hugh told the girl something in Thai. She giggled and proceeded to grab my hand to check her. Then Hugh asked, okay? The three of us laughed. When I think about it, it still makes me laugh today. To any viewers who would write in and say that she might have been a post-op ladyboy, I can say there was no evidence of that. Plus, I don't think the plastic surgeons during that time, even in Thailand, were as skilled as they are now. Also, everything else was real, if you know what I mean. I don't know how much of a tip it was for the whole night and into the next day because Hugh paid for everything. I found out later that Hugh and my friend in the States were business partners. Anyway, all Hugh told me to do was to give her some money to take the tuk-tuk home in the morning. I forgot how much I gave her, but it wasn't much. I don't remember motorbike taxis back then. After that experience, I ended up going by myself and was bar finding different girls in different bars around Patpong. I never got to see any of the other areas in Bangkok. One thing that sticks in my memory was that most Thai girls during those days had very thick eyebrows. I still see some of them do today, but most have gone to a Western style with thinner eyebrows. While in Bangkok, I took in a soapy massage that Hugh had recommended. What a sight to see all those girls in fishbowl, and many of them waving at me to get my attention. That was the first time with the inflatable mattress. Frankly, I didn't find the girls that exciting because my girl was bathing me quite vigorously, and after a while it became painful. I told her to stop, whereupon she rinsed me off and then we had some aerobics. All in all, not the greatest experience. Perhaps that's why I don't really go to any of those soapy places now when I visit Thailand, but I might try one again on this next trip to see if anything has changed. Hugh also took me to this great fishing place outside of Bangkok that he was a member of. I think it was only about 15 to 20 minutes from the hotel. It was this huge lake with small open walled shacks, almost like a big bus stop shelter. If we wanted anything like a beer or food, anything else, we would ring a bell and the kid would come running from across the pond. There were no cell phones or intercom systems. Most of the fish, don't ask me what kind, were huge, slightly shorter than a metre in length and 20 centimetres wide. The setup when you caught a fish, which was pretty much guaranteed because they kept the pond stocked, you had three choices. You could either take it home, have them cook it however you wanted it, or weigh it and throw it back in, to which they would credit you so much baht per kilo. Then at the end of the stay, they would add up what you drank, what you ate, deducted the money made, if any. Pretty sweet. I don't know whether they'd have give you the excess money if you didn't spend that much, but it was really fun. That trip was both eye-opening and left me with a very positive impression that I still have today. It took me decades before returning, which was the first story I submitted about my positive encounters with a ladyboy. Really looking forward to returning before the end of the year. Hope your viewers enjoyed a brief look back in time. And I've mentioned it before, I do like these stories where they're talking about the 80s before I arrived. Just a little bit of trivia here. Now, I arrived early 91, 92. And he said in this story, he said, I don't know if Nana Plaza existed. Well, it did, but Nana Plaza started off as a shopping centre. It wasn't an entertainment outlet. It was, if you don't know Nana Plaza, it's a kind of, it's a big centre. It's got a roof on it now, but it used to be open air. And there's bars on every level, 3 floors, bars go on every level. But when I first arrived there, it was just in that transition period, because in the 80s, it was called the Nana Plaza Shopping Centre, and it was all shops. Now, when I arrived there in the early 90s, 91, 92, it was already starting to transition. So when I arrived, there were 1 or 2 beer bars and go-go bars, but nothing like today. You had I remember there was a Lebanese restaurant in there. There was a gold shop. There was a travel agent. There were 1 or 2 other businesses. The centre of the plaza was just car parking. And it was kind of 50-50 shopping, 50-50 entertainment. But of course, the bars and the go-go clubs make a lot more money. The landlords get greedy, they raise the rents, and of course that pushed the real businesses out. The shops, pharmacies, that sort of thing, they had to move, and then more and more go-go bars and beer bars came in to make it what it is today, just a full-on entertainment centre there. So as I say, a little bit of trivia there for you. Let's jump into story number 3, and I quite like this story. I found this quite interesting. Weird story about a girl I met on Tinder. Hi Peter, my name is Ahmed. I'm in my mid-20s. I live in the Middle East. I'm half Thai and half Arab and was born in Thailand and went to school there. This is my weird story of a girl that I met on Tinder during my 1-month trip to Thailand in April. I live and work in the Middle East, but I fly back to Thailand once a year to see my mum. It was 2 weeks into my trip when I decided to get on Tinder since I was bored at home. I was swiping through many profiles until I matched with a girl called Anne. Anne was a beautiful girl with short brown hair, braces and light skin complexion, which I really liked, as many Thai guys do. She was from Khon Kaen in Isan and in her mid-20s, but lives in Bangkok and works in an office. She isn't a bar girl or a working girl. We started to talk and got along quite well. She seemed like an innocent girl from the way she talked, but there was something about her that I couldn't put my finger on, but we talked for a few days anyway. 1 week before I was due to fly back to the Middle East, I decided to go into Bangkok to do some shopping for my trip back, as my friends back in the Middle East wanted me to get them some t-shirts and clothes. I was talking to Anne in the afternoon when she was about to finish her work at around 5:30. I told her that I was planning to go to the MBK mall to do some shopping. At this point, me and Anne still hadn't met, and she was always busy with work every day, and I was at my home with my mum in Lat Krabang, which is about 30 minutes from central Bangkok. She said that she was free after her work, so we decided to meet up. I got ready and took the airport rail link into Bangkok and the BTS directly to the MBK mall. I got there and took a stroll around the mall looking for clothes and things to take back for my friends. Anne texted me and said, "Where are you?" "I'm here next to McDonald's." I walked for a few minutes trying to find the McDonald's, as I haven't been to the MBK Centre for a few years. I finally found the McDonald's and could see Anne from a distance, and my, was she gorgeous. My heart was pounding stronger as I approached her. We met and smiled at each other, and I was talking in Thai and joked about trying to find each other. She was way better looking than in the pictures. Everything about her was perfect in my eyes, as she was exactly my type. She was wearing a short skirt, white sneakers and a suit top. I thought it was a bit weird that she wore a quite revealing skirt because she worked in an office for a company. I asked her, "How can you wear a skirt that is that short for work?" She replied to me, "It's okay for me, as many of my co-workers and my boss allow us, as a dress code wasn't that strictly enforced." I didn't quite think anything of it, so we continued. We were holding hands and walking and stopped at a shop, and I bought some t-shirts for my friends. We then decided to go grab a bite to eat and went to a restaurant. We sat down and ate, had some nice dinner and talked. Anne said that she needed to go back to her condo to do some leftover work and meet her sister that was staying with her. So I said, "Let's meet again tomorrow." At this point, I was very happy and I was falling for her, even though we've just met for the first time. The following day, we met up at Siam Paragon shopping mall and went for dinner at a Japanese restaurant. The food was quite nice and we talked more. When we finished, we got the bill and I was ready to pay. She got out 1,000 baht and placed it on the table. I told her, "What are you doing?" I got the bill. She insisted on paying, which I think was odd, but nevertheless, I would never let her pay for our dinner since it wasn't right and I was quite well off at the time. So I paid the bill and we left. We decided to go for a drink, so we got on the BTS, and Anne said she saw a bar on Facebook that she thought was nice, a great place to take photos. We got to Sukhumvit Soi 32. The place was called Million Space Bar. It was a space-themed rooftop bar with great atmosphere. We got to the bar and chose the uppermost table with a stunning view of the skyline and BTS trains passing by. We ordered a few drinks, which were amazing, and got quite drunk and took some pictures and selfies. We were getting very physical and sitting very close to each other, and I couldn't resist. We made out. Suddenly we could hear people coming up the steps. We were at the upper level of the bar where there were 3 tables. It was a group of ladies that, from my guess, just finished from a club and decided to come to the bar to continue their night out. We stopped kissing, as us both being Thai, it was inappropriate to kiss in public. At that point, we didn't want the night to end, and with us being both drunk, we decided to find a hotel room for the night because we couldn't go to each other's rooms, and her sister stays with her and I stayed with my mum. So we got a room for the night, not far in Sukhumvit. We got to the room and had a great aerobic session, but with some strange things that I cannot say because of YouTube. But let's just say that she liked and wanted hardcore things, which I was stunned about, as I have not been with any girl that was into that sort of stuff before. We slept until the morning and woke up around 8 a.m. We were talking about how much fun last night was and how much we liked each other. She said that she had something to tell me. I told her yes. She said that she wanted to be completely honest with me because she feels great around me and that we had a good connection. Now this is when things got weird for me. She said that she had a child from a previous boyfriend, in brackets, which is fine. He was very abusive towards her and that she did not want to be with a guy that was abusive. I assured her I would never be abusive and that I wasn't like that. She said that I have a confession about my past. She told me, if you can handle it, then we could be together if you're not serious or embarrassed about it. So I told her what. She explained to me that a few years ago that she had been in a few adult films that were quite famous on websites and was even shared around in the Line group chats for a while. She said she had been in the adult films because at the time she was young and needed the money. She then pulled out a photo from her wallet. It was a photo of her with a guy in a scene. She was younger and her hair was longer back then. At this point, I couldn't say anything. It was like the whole world had stopped spinning. The girl that I liked and thought to have a relationship just crumbled. I didn't know what to say. I don't even know why she had shown me the photo. She told me that videos were made a long time ago and that she would never be in one again. I just wanted to leave right there and then. We checked out of the hotel because she needed to go to work and I needed to return home. When I got back home, I couldn't take it in what happened. I was constantly thinking about it. We talked that afternoon, but I did not mention the story and talked as if everything was normal. A few days later, I texted her and said I'm leaving back to the Middle East in a few days and that I did not want to continue the relationship. She respected the decision and I told her we could remain being friends. I don't know what other guys would have done in this situation. Maybe some guys could handle it, but I couldn't. Nevertheless, Anne was a nice girl and we had an amazing time together and kept in touch even after I got back. It just goes to show you that even if you think you have met the right girl, sometimes it's just not meant to be. I have attached a few photos and they're for your eyes only. Thanks a lot, Peter. Yeah, I did look at the photograph. She's a very attractive girl, and he did send me the I can't share them with you guys. It's a shame really, but he did send me the actual a scan of the photograph that she showed him. And let's just put it this way, it wasn't a photograph that you'd take home and show your mother, that's for sure. You know, one thing you might be wondering is why did she tell him this? Because if she hadn't said anything, she'd potentially, you know, he's well off, he's half Arab, half Thai. She could have potentially had a new father for her baby. She didn't need to say anything. I've had this discussion with Thai girls before, and what they say in this kind of a situation, it's always better to be upfront and tell the guy, because if the guy walks away, you haven't lost anything. But, you know, if they get into a relationship and 2 years down the line, somebody meets him who knew her past and says something about it, then it can be really bad because they've set up home, they've been together for a couple of years, and so that's why most of the time girls like this are totally upfront and they take a chance, say, look, here's my past, take it or leave it, and if the guy walks, he walks, and if he doesn't, nobody can blackmail her, hold something on her, and that's why they do it. Quite interesting, actually, completely different to the West, where women will lie through their teeth and never tell you anything, most of them anyway. Right, I'm going to end with a very, very short one. Sometimes I reject stories. It's very, very rare I reject a story. The only reason I reject stories if they're so badly written that they take me a long time to edit. There's a lot of slang in there that's native to their countries. I just can't spend a whole afternoon, or they don't take care. You know, there's like multiple full stops, no capitals. The I's are all small, and I'm quite particular, you know, but actually most of them get through. I don't really reject them. But another reason I reject stories is if they're very, very short, because you just can't get into them. You start reading it and then it's finished. So sometimes guys send me stories that are very, very short and I just say, I'm really sorry, but I can't use this. Now, this is a short story, but when I read it, I thought, well, this is worth tagging on to the end of this upload because it's quite interesting. It's short, but it's a good little story. So let me just read it out to you. I came to Thailand in 2009 after serving 4 years in Iraq with the US Army. That was my final assignment, at which point I retired. I was single, aged 59, and decided on Thailand because the military had deployed me there numerous times on short assignments during my 30-year career, and it was my favourite country anywhere, hands down. So I came to Pattaya with the goal of meeting and marrying a beautiful Thai lady. I believed in the principle of choose wisely, my son, so I did not date bar girls. Financially, I had a military pension and would soon qualify for Social Security monthly checks, so money was not an issue. I enjoyed walking the streets of Pattaya daily, chatting with locals, but did not find that special lady for 5 months. I passed this street side noodle stand often, and one day the elderly female cook owner stopped me and told me her daughter was interested in dating me. I thought the lady was joking, smiled and continued walking. Her 28-year-old daughter worked with her and was absolutely stunning, but I truly didn't think she was serious. 2 weeks later, fortunately for me, that same lady stopped me again to say her daughter was still interested. Really? I couldn't believe it. We set up a cinema dinner date and that was the start of true magic. We married 6 months later, had a son 2 years after that. Today, we've been married for over 12 years in a land of hundreds of absolutely incredible, attractive Thai ladies. Patience is important. If you find the right one, you wake up every morning knowing you're in paradise. So, do you agree with me, guys? Was that a good story to tell out? That's 2 success stories today, and that's the thing about Thailand. Now, this sort of thing can happen. You know, ladies selling noodles. My daughter's interested in you. You know, it sounds a little bit suspicious, but the thing is, you know, when a single lady in Thailand who's 28, believe it or not, guys, I know it's not the same in the West, but they're getting past their sell-by date. Once they hit 30, the culture is just not set up. Thai guys are not interested in older women for whatever reason. They can be absolute stunners, but that's just the culture. And I'm presuming that the mother, the noodle seller, because her daughter was 28, she was getting quite panicky and wanted to see her get married, and maybe thought a foreigner was the only option at the time. But I'm glad it worked out for them, and the couple at the beginning as well, that worked out as well. All right, guys, that's it for this week as usual. Thanks for tuning in. Very old way of describing things there, tuning in, showing my age. But thanks for watching the upload today. I'll be back next Saturday with a bunch more stories. And once again, guys, if you're sitting on a story, please send it in, and I'll make it anonymous, and I'll read it out like I have these today. Thanks for watching, guys.